Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
Jemele Hill.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
A lot of congratulations in order since the last time we saw you.
I know.
That's right.
Look at
Congrats.
you. Let's see the ring. Oh.
The engagement, of
First,
course.
yes, congrats.
You got
Thank
named
you.
Journalist of the Year by NAB.
Congrats.
NAB.
Nab J.
NAB J. Oh, you say the J? I thought the J was silent.
The J was silent. What?
I really did.
No, National
Which was-
Association of Black
Black journalists. Okay.
Which was dope because I was in Detroit.
Yeah, it
that They
was.
actually honored you, and you're from Detroit.
It was very dope, and I joined NABJ actually when I was 16, and
Really?
I joined it in Detroit. So that was the first time the convention had been there since I was a teenager.
Why is it important to join? I never even thought about that.
Oh, it's very important, and it allowed me to go on a short spiel here. But look, this is the largest minority journalism organization in the country. Over 3,000 journalists. It's great from a career development standpoint, but more importantly, and you guys know just how crucial this is, when you see people who look like you doing something you want to do, it can be very life-changing. And so for me, joining NABJ was life-changing in terms of, networking, internships, but mostly because I felt inspired by so many Black journalists who were committed to just fairly and accurately telling the stories of our community.
Got you.
Yeah.
And I got to Detroit. I saw you on the cover of the paper out there. I was like, Jemele Hill.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I was sick of myself, honestly. after that, we talking about myself, and of course, Detroit. That's the city that is still near and dear to my heart. That I'll always love and always be in love with. So to see them welcome me and embrace me in that way, it just meant so much to me. And my family, they don't get an opportunity to see me sort of celebrated in that way. So for my mom, my dad, uncles, cousins, for them to all kind of see this entire welcoming, I know it was special for them too.
You know what I find very dope about you? The fact that you worked for such a big company at ESPN. And everybody was like, oh, why would you ever leave ESPN? There's nothing after this.
Right.
And I feel like your name is bigger than that now.
Well, that's a big compliment because ESPN is, still in terms of sports media, is still the premier destination. But I just felt a pull and a calling to do more and to do something else. And as you guys know, I mean, some of the things that you want to do, it's hard to do it with corporate interests that you have to keep in mind. I mean, that's the reality of business. We all got to work for somebody.
Right.
Somebody is signing our checks, right? And not that I don't have, corporate interests I have to adhere to now, but it's just a much different relationship that there is a different sense of freedom that I have now that I didn't have before.
Did you have a plan? Was it a plan? It was like, this is the plan I'm going to follow? Or was it one of those things where I'm just going to make it happen?
I had a plan. I had sort of been thinking about life after ESPN for a while. Like at least, it's like in a relationship, they always say that by the time you actually break up with somebody that you've been thinking about it for at least 6 months.
Especially women, we've been broken up.
You know what I'm saying?
So by
We
the
left
time
the
we walk
relationship
away,
a long time ago.
Yeah.
You ain't even dating us no more. You dating like our clone. Like
Lord have
somebody.
mercy.
Well, tell these fellas how they know, because they don't know what's
It's
going
definitely
on.
true for women.
They still
Guys
bringing
be
you
so caught off
flowers and
guard.
stuff.
Like, I thought
How do we know?
you
still
was
bringing
okay with me
flowers.
You
cheating.
just dating somebody's tethered and don't even know it.
It's like you dating a hologram and you didn't even know it. You're just like, what's going on? So I guess I just started to kind of see things a lot differently. I know a lot of people look at the stuff that happened with me and Donald Trump as the reason that I left, and that wasn't it. It actually had a total opposite effect where an awakening occurred within me because of that. And so I was like, there's other content that's out there. Plus, as you guys know, all these streaming services were really pouring a lot of money into content. And so I had already started a production company with one of my best friends. So in order for me to be able to produce and create, I had to be kind of free from ESPN to do that, because otherwise I'd have been in the legal department every second saying, hey, is it okay if I do this? Hey, is it okay if I write for this? Hey, if it's okay. And I was like, nah, I don't think I can go through that for this iteration. So there was a plan in place. Writing has always been my bread and butter, so I knew I could write for pretty much anybody if I wanted to. The podcast is something I hadn't really thought about. That was the one that was a bit of a curveball that kind of I hadn't in this grand plan of mine. Podcast wasn't really in there.
What made you
That's
do that?
interesting though, because I mean you got the Unbothered podcast now, but you and Michael Smith kind of popped
we
off
had
because of his
one.
and hers.
I know.
The podcast.
I know it seems odd to say that, but I hadn't really been thinking in that direction. And then, as the opportunity kind of arose to work with Spotify, I thought, oh, yeah, that does kind of
What
make
got you
all the
back in that
sense of work.
direction? What made you think about, you know what? I'm going to go back to that podcast. That podcast is starting to sound good.
Well, I'm a podcast fan, so and I always think that it's a much more intimate platform than I think even being on a radio show. I mean, you know this too, as somebody who podcasts, is when you sit down with people and you have them in this kind of enclosed environment and you guys are just in there kicking it, you learn so much about people and who they truly are. And so I wanted to be able to kind of delve into that and also just have some of the crazy conversations, much like you guys have on here every day. In fact, I guess to pay you a huge compliment, and I promise you I'm not sucking up to you just because I'm on your show, but what I had in mind once the podcast became real was a Breakfast Club type of atmosphere.
Oh, that's
Oh,
cool.
dope.
Yeah, so 'cause
Like
you
a
know-
messy room.
Yeah.
with no-
Messy room, no food.
Well,
The problem with podcasts is you can get too comfortable.
Yes,
I've
you can.
gotten in more trouble on my podcast than I've ever gotten on Breakfast
We
Club.
know.
Yeah, you can get too comfortable.
No, you can't. Just because the environment just lends itself to that. You don't have the commercial break stopping you.
Yeah.
Nobody with a bleep button. Like
Right,
none of
and
that.
now you can say anything.
You can say anything
that
and
you wanna say.
unleash on people. Because I've definitely, when we had the His and Hers podcast, I definitely told some stories on that one where now I'm just like, I probably shouldn't have said that, but hey, now you know. Because it's also an opportunity for people to learn, about you too.
Would you
as
have
well as your
Donald
guests.
Trump on your podcast?
To do what? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, as a guest? Nah.
No.
No. So that can be the fine line. And I'd be curious to hear you guys how you balance it. Is that there is a fine line between having people on that you disagree with, having people on that you feel like are thoughtful, even if you don't
Right.
agree with
You
what
can
they
still
say.
respect them as a person.
Correct.
And,
And
respect
disagree.
their opinion, but respectfully disagree.
But then there's capitulating the stupid,
Right.
which I can't do. And so it's hard for me to play to a lowest common denominator, to do that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And so, I don't want to do that. I've never been about that. So it's just certain people that are just banned from ever being on there.
Who else is banned besides Donald Trump? Is anybody else that's
and you're trying
banned?
to always get the controversy.
Why y'all trying to get
I'm
me in
just curious.
trouble?
You think-
I think we would have Donald Trump on, but I do have a problem with the media constantly giving Donald Trump so much attention. I feel
Yeah.
like whether we know it or not, we're empowering him by keeping him in the news cycle all the
But
time.
you have
We
to
are.
because he's the president.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's
He's in a position where we do have to pay
You-
attention.
you
But we
do-
did it when he wasn't the president. That's how I think he became the president.
Well, no, that is, I think that's where the media failed. That was where we were irresponsible, is that we treated his candidacy like it was a joke, like
Yeah.
it was part of entertainment, when we should have been treating him like somebody who really is trying to lead this country. But yeah, I don't know, like Candace Owens, I don't think I'd ever have her on.
What's the point, right?
It's not about, there's a ton of conservative viewpoints I respect. Like I love S.C. Cupp. Like I think she, even though I don't agree with
See, that's
everything
the
she
difference.
says.
Respect, though, because
Yeah.
you respect that.
Well, it's just, but it just
respect
feels
her.
to me, that there are some people who want to be on your platform to boost themselves. I mean, we're all I'm not on the Breakfast
Like a
Club.
Tommy Lauren would want to
Like
come
Tommy
on
Lauren,
to boost
so-
herself and say something outrageous.
Correct. Like she would never be welcome
that
on
would
anything.
play to her base of people.
Correct.
And then,
Yeah, and I just don't think that she really is that thoughtful, and that it feels to me like she's playing a role. So I don't want to be a part of that. So people like that, I would not want on there. But people I disagree with, I'm fine with. I'm okay with having that on there. Everybody doesn't have to think like me, because that wouldn't be entertaining at all.
So you don't just disagree. You don't just disagree with somebody like Candace. You feel like her comments aren't genuine.
or
Yeah,
thoughtful.
I just feel like they're not thoughtful, and I think she does a lot of trying to punch up to try to boost herself and her platform. And I would just feel, I would feel like she would be trying to use what I'm bringing to the table to boost herself in a way that I didn't think was credibly adding to the conversation.
Well, you just gave her 60 seconds. She about to tweet you right now.
Damn it.
She about to tweet
went
you
off on
right
her,
now.
I don't care about that woman. So it's like, look, get it how you live. All right, that's not my responsibility. I'm not trying to take any money out of her pocket, because I'm sure she will survive quite well
Right.
without ever being on Unbothered.
Now, you recently wrote an article also about NFL players knowing their power. Do you feel like things are changing now within the NFL, like genuinely changing?
Well, I still think that until they get fully guaranteed contracts, it's going to always be a certain struggle. But look, I know a lot of people didn't like the way Antonio Brown left the Steelers. It was messy. That was a really messy breakup. But at the same time, you have to understand the method to why he did it. And, he didn't have any guaranteed money coming over the next 3 years. People have to understand that doesn't mean he wouldn't be getting paid, but it does mean that he could be out the door at any time. Right? And we have all this energy for these players when they decide to leave or when they do what he did and force a trade. But there's no energy when an owner will cut somebody halfway through their deal.
For business reasons.
For business reasons. That's considered shrewd. That's considered, doing what's in the best interest of the team. Justin Houston, he got cut by the Chiefs. He's halfway through a deal that was worth $106 million. Wow. And everybody said that was smart of Kansas City because he had been injured for the last couple years. So I think now NFL players are starting to get it. And what's really interesting to me is that they're looking at NBA players, and specifically they're looking at somebody like LeBron James, who has become his own empire. And they're trying to figure out, hey, how can I do something like that? So it was, to me, and I wrote about this, no coincidence that Antonio Brown was on the shop. And then all of this kind of unfolds because I feel like a lot of NFL players, not just him, are trying to figure out how can we get this NBA money.
But how can you, though, when the NBA's contracts are structured totally different?
To me, we will know if they really about that life when that CBA is up. Because what happens is when the CBA is up, everybody starts thinking about ooh, I don't have any checks coming in. They out here living like they're going to make this money forever, right? And so they tend to fold at that time. And unfortunately in the NFL, they've created a hierarchy system so that the players are almost fighting with each other. I thought it was just real disrespectful that Le'Veon Bell's own teammates kept trying to jump in his pockets. He's trying to hold out for something bigger. His position is undervalued. He's one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in the NFL, and to have your own teammates basically say you shouldn't be fighting for what you're worth, that's crazy. How they get undermined, because they have figured out a way to divide and conquer. When you have quarterbacks making so much more money than everybody else, it's going to create a natural crabs in the barrel system, and the owners have been successful. I just hope the players understand what the game is, and so when that CBA comes up, they need to stand together.
What did you think about Odell being traded to the Browns? What were your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
My thought was, so let me get this straight. It's like you have a quarterback that's 175 years old.
I'm with you.
And you trade one of the best offensive weapons in the NFL because
what?
Because of what? Because
he wanted to cheerlead and play football, and they told me he had to pick one.
You know what?
He's a jerk. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I thought maybe it was something else to it.
No, it was a clueless trade, in my opinion. Look, hey, shout out to fantasy owners. Y'all better pick up Saquon Barkley because he's gonna be carrying the ball 700 times next season because they got nothing else. They got nothing else. But it was really bizarre because in New York, this is where you keep stars.
Right.
This is where you promote stars, make them stars, and you have is one of the few faces of the NFL right here in your city, and you trade them to the Browns. But hey, the Browns, they're all good. They're about to be lit next season. So
they should be.
I feel happy for them because that's a long-suffering fan base, and so they deserve to have something nice happen to them for once.
I'm sitting there. Why wouldn't you keep doing the His and Hers podcast? Because you were so successful with His and Her podcast with Michael Smith. Why not keep that going?
Look, I can't talk about players still under contract. One of us is at ESPN, one of us is not.
Gotcha.
And
so logistically, we get it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and you guys know how I feel about Mike, and we never, when I said goodbye to ESPN, I think we always had the sense we would work together again. And I still think that'll happen at some point. But a lot of people who were fans of our podcast have asked, is it going to be a reunion of the podcast? Are you going to have Michael Smith on? I'm like, I would love to have Michael Smith on, but that's not up to me.
Gotcha.
Or is it up to Michael Smith? That's up to ESPN. So, but no, I don't. While he's still working there, it would be very unlikely that we would be able to do that.
I feel like you was Harriet Tubman, and you was like, Michael, come on. And
No.
Michael dragged his feet just a little bit.
No, it wasn't like that at all. I think there was a sense of urgency that I felt that was, that it just wouldn't let me rest. I knew it was time. And even though I had an opportunity to stay if I wanted, it just felt like I had exhausted all the possibilities at ESPN.
Gotcha.
And so, I think Mike is in a different situation. I certainly had a little more flexibility from a personal standpoint. You know, Mike is married with 3 kids. You know, while I wasn't single, you know, I wasn't, you know, I didn't have a ring then. So it was a little different. I could mostly and largely just think about, you know, myself. And I think there's probably still things that Mike wants to do there. And I don't begrudge him that. A lot of my friends still work at ESPN and they're doing great things. But it just felt like for me, the timing was too right and too perfect, and I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, you knew at some point you would have to leave, but that just some things accelerated that.
Yeah,
decision,
I mean,
sure.
it did. I mean, a lot of things accelerated, you know, the process. It was, you know, it was also seeing what was available right in front of me, and I didn't want those opportunities to slip by. I didn't know. I mean, I guess sometimes we feel like, hey, in 2 years, this is still going to be there, and I certainly had that feeling like, 2 years, I don't know if this picture is going to look the same way, so let me go ahead and jump on this now.
So it feels like you're very happy with your decision.
I am. I'm really happy, and it was one of those few cases. You know, a lot of times, again, I guess to use the relationship analogy, usually when you split with somebody, it doesn't end with both parties being in a good place, but in this case, it truly was that way, where it was the best decision for everybody, and it was amicable. I mean, you know, I still have a lot of relationships that are still good there. And even when I left, I mean, we talked about at some point, you know, maybe collaborating again on some things. So I feel good about how I left things.
Would you have been able to do certain things like collaborate with LeBron like you have? Would that have been?
Possible. Yeah, I think it would have been possible. Would it have been difficult to get greenlit? Yes. I mean, and look, I understand. I mean, you're ESPN. They paying me. You know, they're not paying me to work with LeBron on somebody else's platform. You know, that's just the way the game is played. So I think I would have had to go to the mat for it a little bit, but, you know, they probably would have seen, you know, that maybe some residual publicity, or that it just in the spirit of collaboration, given the fact that ESPN has projects with LeBron that are on ESPN Plus. They want to work with him on some level. So maybe we could have done some, you know, horse trading there. But there are other things I've done since that I know I wouldn't have been able to do there. Yeah, the Atlantic, you know, who I write for, I could have never probably.
That wouldn't be happening.
No, I could never have freelanced for them or, you know, written for them in any capacity. And I've long respected this magazine. So being able to fully commit and work with them is also a treat.
Is it hard to give honest opinions about somebody like LeBron now, since y'all do a little business together?
Let me clear something up. I have never received any check on it that said that was signed by LeBron James. Okay,
not what about Maverick?
Not Maverick, not Rich Paul, not Gloria James. Like you might get to the kids too. Okay, you know, none of them. The kids, nobody. Savannah, none of them. None of their names have ever appeared on any check that I have. But look, I told this to the Atlantic just to because it was something I agreed to do before I went to work with them. So that's the other point to make. But I told them, look, I trust you guys, and if LeBron does something and I come with a softball opinion, you guys will know it when you read it, and you wouldn't run it. And for that matter, I would have you'd have every right to give me a firm talking to if I did it. But to give LeBron some credit, he's savvy enough, understands how the media is. He knows that if I had to, you know, write something critical about him, that it wouldn't be coming from an unfair place. You know, I mean, I would feel like any criticism I would have from him, have for him, and this has always been the case whenever I've talked about him, has always been fair, right? And so I think most athletes, they can handle criticism as long as you're fair and you don't, you know, sort of punch below the belt.
It's not personal. It's just about the game.
Precisely, as always.
With that being said, LeBron, the Lakers, people are saying it's not a good fit and thinking about maybe LeBron should be on the Lakers.
No, I'm not gonna lie that they
first time he didn't make the playoffs
in a long time. But I'm not gonna lie, like they definitely didn't meet expectations. They were playoff bound before he got hurt. I think he was probably more hurt than people probably knew. And he didn't tell me that, but that's just my guess.
Right.
I think that they will do some significant retooling once this season is officially over. And I fully expect next season that they will make the playoffs. But I think it was just different as a basketball fan to see him in that place, because not since his early Cleveland days have we seen that. I mean, these playoffs are going to be different to watch without him in it, you know. And
without watching him lose again. That's the truth to the matter. Like,
look at the teams he has gone against, man. Like, I get it. You
beat
know,
him once. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Look, you know what the media does? The media overhypes LeBron, right? The media sets a bar for LeBron so high.
How they overhype? They don't overhype that,
because
man.
if you go back and watch when he signed to the Lakers, they was like, he's going to win 50 games, and they're going to go to the Western Conference Finals. What about that roster made you think that?
Yeah, I would not have gone that far, but I did think they
gonna
were
go to
at least a
playoffs.
playoff team.
Yeah, I thought so, too.
Maybe
Yeah, I
AC,
think they were
maybe.
a playoff team. And look, if there's something to be said for missing it as opposed to being the 8th seed and getting stomped out by Golden State or Houston or any of the other good teams, I think we're just so used to LeBron creating, something out of nothing, which he did a lot of times in Cleveland, that I think most people are wondering, and I had this thought myself, is like, is this when the slowdown starts? Because he's defied the injury odds for the majority of his career, hadn't lost a step. But I have to say, when I watch him now, I mean, he looks a little slower. I think some of that is, again, because he's more hurt or was more hurt than people knew. And it's just age. It happens to everybody, right? So
I think
just
LeBron has
it's different.
exceeded expectations, meaning that from where he came out of high school and what people thought he was going to be, he did that.
I think the 3 greatest overall sports stories I've seen, since I've been a sports writer, are Serena and Venus Williams,
Absolutely,
and LeBron James.
Wow.
Because when you look at their starting points to where they became, when you look at the expectations, I covered LeBron's first nationally televised high school game, and the amount of hype that people had and expectation to exceed that is saying something. You're on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 15, 16 years old. It's so many athletes that have been in that position, been on the cover and done nothing with their careers. True. And to say this dude is going to win multiple MVPs, multiple championships, do it on 2 different teams. Nobody, even as great as they thought that he was, nobody thought he was capable of doing that. Now, you look at Venus and Serena Williams, it's the same thing. Yep. From the courts of Compton, the fact that they were self-taught by their father who just watched VHS tapes. Like, that doesn't even seem possible to infiltrate a super white sport like tennis. And for Richard Williams to be the one that said, as good as you guys think Venus is, Serena's going to be the one that's going to be the greatest ever.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's an incredible sports story, in its totality. So, like, I agree with you. Like, LeBron has exceeded expectations in every single way. And then to look at the mogul he's become.
Right.
Like, that's the athletic part may wind up being the least interesting part when he's done as a businessman.
Does Melo retire? Or has he to retire and nobody knows?
I think the game might have retired him.
Yeah. Isn't that just sad, though?
Well, it is kind of sad to see him go out that way because I think
he's not trash. He was still dropping 16, 18 points. He's
not
trash.
He is not trash.
But they making it seem like he's trash, which is foul.
I think what it was is that for the role that maybe he wanted to play, the role, of being sort of still the star player, that wasn't sort of possible anymore.
Team, no.
I think people just assume that if he isn't playing a significant part of the offense, or if things aren't revolving around him, it's going to be hard for him to adjust. I mean, it is like when you used to being that dude. It's not a lot of players that can just make themselves into role players and just say, you know what, I'm used to getting 15, 20 shots a game. I'll settle for these 5. It's like, And, he ain't never been the greatest defender, so it was like, offensive genius was his main thing. So, had he been like a defensive stopper on top of it, then you can slide in and out of different roles, but that wasn't him. I hope he is able to come back because given how other players, like when you talk to other players across the NBA, they love him. Yeah. Like, he's very revered, and he deserves a farewell tour.
I agree.
So I hope somebody is able to give him, a slot or a spot, or even at this point, if he realizes, you know what, even if I come back and just average 10 minutes a game, it's worth it because he had the kind of offensive career that needs to be celebrated. You look at his buddy Dwayne Wade and the way
everybody's excited for his farewell.
Yeah, I mean, Dwayne Wade could probably play another 3 years, but to see him celebrated with all he's given to the game, I mean, that part is really special. I guess Dirk doesn't know he's retiring because he keeps saying
Dirk ain't never even said he's retiring.
He's never even said it. He's like, I think about it off season. I'm like, well, they telling you to go. They're like, oh, you got to leave and get the hell out of here. So, but yeah, very celebrated.
Last
Do you ever get
basketball
tired of
question,
talking about sports?
No, I don't.
Okay.
'Cause I got one more basketball question.
Oh, all right.
How much do you love our Brooklyn Nets?
You know what? I got to give it up to Brooklyn. I really do. And especially, somebody like, D'Angelo,
He's
man.
balling.
A lot of people have been on Magic Johnson's head saying that, you made a mistake
Shouldn't
by
let that boy
trading
go, yep.
D'Angelo Russell. You made a mistake. You shouldn't have done it. I don't think he plays like this in L.A. He needed to change the scenery. We know all the drama that happened. Like, how is that team supposed to be built around him after all that?
Yeah, you a spy.
that happened.
We're very happy to have D'Angelo Russell at the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I bet. And the Nets, they kind of deserve to have some good things as well. And to see them playoff bound, man, that's great. But it's a good lesson for players who, especially young players, they could get on you early and doubt you and discredit you. If you just focus on making yourself better at the craft, you'll reap some good rewards. And to his credit, a lot of players would not have mentally recovered from that, and he did. And now he's a leader for his team and maybe about to go to the playoffs. I mean, my Pistons fight for their dear life trying to get in there, thanks to the Nets.
We beat the Pistons.
Yes, exactly.
Kevin Durant.
He's not coming to the Knicks. He said no way.
Is Kevin Durant coming to the Knicks? That was an old video, by the way. That was
Wait,
old.
did you say no way?
She said no.
No
he
way,
did
no
say
how?
no way in the video. He was like, no,
He
he's
said
not coming. But that was
absolutely never.
old. What do you think, Kevin Durant? Is he going to sign? Is he going to stay with Golden State? Is he
I
leaving?
feel like he's coming to New York.
That's what I'm talking about.
I
That's
do.
what I'm talking about.
I do. I feel like he's coming to New York. I'm believing it.
Why?
Let
though?
this queen speak.
Well, put it like this. Do you really think he's going back to Golden State?
Why not?
Well, I mean, I can think of that team. It's
Somebody's leaving. I don't know if it's gonna be KD though.
It might be, but that team, in many ways, they sort of look like they're kind of sick of each other at times,
Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, when you play as many games as they've played these last few seasons, and look, I'm sure they're still very close. So I don't want to, create any unnecessary drama, but. The arguments that you see boiling up, and there's a little more tension now, and some of them thrive off that tension. Draymond certainly does, but it feels like KD might be sick of the situation. His body language, he kind of seems that way, and New York, in a lot of ways, would be a perfect landing spot for him.
I don't think he can handle the media here in New York.
Well, this has been a question that's been brought up, especially. One of the unfortunate atrocities of the media industry is that it's shrunk quite a bit. Does the New York media even still have the same bite it used to?
No,
I'm
our
not.
team sucks. That's why our team sucks. It doesn't really matter.
I just don't think the New York media market is as treacherous as it used to be.
Shit.
You get a lot of attention, right? But the way that people used to come at some guy's head, I mean, I don't really see as much of that anymore. So
That's James Dolan.
Well, but he's earned all that smoke.
That is true.
Yeah, I mean, he has earned all that smoke. But I mean, for KD, I mean, the opportunity to play in a market like this, I think getting back to it being his own team. Golden State probably taught him how to win in many respects. So, why not come to New York? I mean,
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks. I mean, the league is more interesting when the Knicks are good. Most
I don't remember.
So it hasn't been interesting in a while.
I've never seen that.
Like, I don't recall that.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
What do you think about getting banned from the Garden just for saying sell the team, get rid of James Dolan, get rid of the owner?
Oh, I didn't know you could get banned for saying the obvious. It's like James Dolan is one of the worst owners in sports. Like, that's just a fact.
You're banned now too.
You can't go to no more games.
It's
Over.
for James Dolan. He is one of the worst owners.
He is.
Now
I'm banned.
for a lot of different reasons, but. It just shows how thin-skinned that he is. Why should he even care about what somebody else says?
Right.
And it's not like he's the fair, like cursed about it. He's just like sell the team. Like that's just the most.
Everyone's been saying it.
Hello, that's like one of the most benign insults, if you want to call it that I could imagine.
Yeah,
But
go make $1 billion. That's all he literally said. Yeah, go make $1 billion.
pretty much. I mean, I guess I could understand it more if they insulted his rock band. Have you guys heard his music?
No.
Yeah,
It's not good.
I'm no music critic. Just saying, I don't hear any bops. That's all I gotta say. I don't hear any bops.
I saw you getting at Russell Turner because he referred to the player King as Queen.
Yeah.
What was that about?
So, so this coach, I mean, a lot of people, we've obviously had a lot of conversation about coaches and their behavior toward players. Tom Izzo, the way that he interacted, I think it was with his freshman, Aaron Henry, that became a big story. And, I covered Tom Izzo for 6 years and known him for longer than that. And what people don't understand is that Tom Izzo is okay with his players coming back at him. I witnessed him and Mateen Cleaves having many an argument on the sideline. Him and Zach Randolph, many an argument. And him and Draymond Green, same thing. That he respects players that fire back on him. Mm-hmm. So he's okay with that. With this coach, the reason I thought this was like really egregious is, and admittedly, I'm more sensitive to it just because I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. But it seems like in sports, whenever coaches want to motivate, young men, they do it by degrading women.
You play like a girl.
You play like a girl. You whining like a girl. You crying like a girl. You're doing this like a girl. And it's like, why do we always have to be the example of weakness? Now, I get that men are physically stronger than women. I understand that part of it. But even when it comes to mental toughness, and last I checked, women were the ones out here having babies, right? Like pulling very large human beings out of places and crevices that, we won't talk about here. So women are tough. And so and just even what we withstand every day in society. And so for that to be your go-to insult, I just thought it wasn't befitting of a coach. On top of the fact, why are you talking to somebody else's players anyway? That's a real big no-no. You sort of heckling somebody else's players or even having any conversation with them at all. So I just thought it was a bad look for that coach.
And even saying a woman plays like a girl isn't like an insult, though. Because, if you ever watch the WNBA, they're so fundamentally sound. if that's the case, Tim Duncan played like a woman, too. He
didn't mean it as a compliment.
Fundamentally sound.
It's not meant as a compliment.
You're just saying that because Tim Duncan is the bank shot king. And that's why.
He's just the big fundamental.
Big fundamental.
Yeah.
So you're like, no, you can use it as a compliment, but I just rarely hear it, said that way. Because
that's not what he meant. He didn't
mean it that way. I think it was in a lot of rap songs. I've heard this, a lot of hip hop songs, or when they say jealousy and pettiness, that's a female trait.
Yeah.
What? Man, oh my God, y'all petty and jealous.
Nobody more petty. This guy's name is DJ Envy.
And I'm very petty.
That's right. I'm like, how did we get the characteristics of being the only petty and jealous ones or whatever? So it's just that stuff it really grinds my gears.
No,
as
I
they
get
say.
it. I never even understood when guys call other guys pussy. I enjoy pussy. I love it. That's my thing. You know what I'm saying? So why would I'm trying to
just went
degrade
in a
you?
whole nother direction.
I'm trying to degrade you. Why would I call you something I enjoy?
We should call you a D. Right.
Well, I'm just gonna pass on this part.
So what can we look forward to on Unbothered?
You can look forward to more of me. There's that part of it, but great conversations. I got two amazing co-hosts, which we'll announce later today. And we hope to have great guests. In fact, I'm putting Charlamagne in the hot seat, so he'll be a guest on Unbothered. So just a lot of the things that you guys observed, a lot of things people are talking about. We want to bring that to the podcast environment, and people know my personality. I mean, they see how I am on social media, and so you'll get that. Some spicy hot takes. You'll get that as well. And so we're going to cover the gamut of, sports, news, politics, pop culture, all those things, and just hopefully create an environment that's like a hang. You guys have created a hang where people feel like, even though it's very early in the morning, that I'm at the bar with some of my best friends. And, we're discussing some of life's issues. We're yelling at each other, but it's all communal. And, at the end of the day, everybody walks away with a good feeling. So I hope to recreate something like that.
Your rhetoric causes you to get a lot of threats.
I do.
It causes a lot of controversy. Do you ever think you'll get to a point where it's no longer worth the risk?
No, I don't think so. I think if you have a truth to tell, if you have, something that is like really seeped into your spirit, that you have every right to expose and to tell that truth. And a lot of the things that I say, and I bet you're probably at this point too, is that I'm so shocked at what people think is controversial.
Oh my
like,
God,
I feel like I don't even say anything all that controversial.
Right.
And they're like, oh, and then next thing I know, because I can always tell when Breitbart writes about me. By the way, nobody from Breitbart will ever be invited on the podcast or Fox News. So there you go. There's two more to add to the list.
Gotcha.
But no, it's just whenever I say something, I'm just shocked at what people consider to be controversial. Like I was, we were talking about the Electoral College on Twitter, and that conversation was going, and I said, well, part of the reason the Electoral College exists, it was to preserve slavery. I thought literally everybody knew this. It's been written about 1 billion times. Historians, constitutional experts have all written this, and yet it was blog post after blog post of me, saying this about slavery. And, whenever you invoke anything about slavery, it's just a controversy.
Yeah, right.
So I guess, for me, I don't really care about the controversies I create, because most of the things that people consider to be controversial, I consider to be saying, hey, this, iPhone cord is white. It's like, oh, okay. I thought everybody literally knew.
What'd you say about white people?
What'd you say about white people?
It's always the things you didn't think was going to cause any problems that cause problems.
Right.
And the things you think are going to cause problems, people
like
just
people don't even care.
It just make you be like, let me just not even write anything. Sometimes
I feel like that about Twitter. That's why I don't be on Twitter
Sometimes
no more.
I want to say stuff, and I'm like, you know what? They're going to misinterpret what I'm saying. Let me just not even bother. It's not even worth it.
Well, I mean, like
That's what I do, because I'm just like, this is just going to be stupid. I don't feel like dealing with it.
Because that's the one downside of Twitter, is like it does not allow for a certain amount to be context, a certain amount of context, to be had. I mean, I thought probably the most controversial thing I've ever said is that Scarface is a trash movie, right?
Oh my God! I was about to say rapper.
All right,
what?
let's wrap this up.
Not the rapper.
No, Scarface is trash.
The Scarface is
I didn't think
trash.
that was a
Scarface
trash
trash.
movie.
Oh my God,
Scarface trash.
entertaining.
I'm a New Jack City guy. I love New Jack City.
I love New Jack City.
Scarface trash.
It wasn't
No,
trash.
It was trash.
I've never watched Scarface all the way through.
I have.
Never.
You always bail out, right?
Yeah,
and
bits
it
and
doesn't.
pieces like-
It hasn't aged
No.
well. I could watch New Jack City tomorrow.
Yeah, me
Yes.
too. New Jack City's a better movie. I mean, we're not comparing.
No,
New
but
Jack
You
City's
like
better.
both.
Yeah, but everybody loves Scarface because you have, when you look at the list of actors that are in it, you got Michelle Pfeiffer, Al Pacino. I mean, it's just F. Murray Abraham. It's an incredible collection of actors. If I told you this list of actors is in a movie about a drug dealer trying to make his way out of Miami, even though he in love with his sister, and he was. So y'all can at me, fight me, whatever, he was. So if I told you what the movie was about and who was in it, you say this movie is going to be outstanding. But you watch it, and I just have always thought that movie was
trash.
whack.
Yes.
Trash.
Whack.
Oh, it's
like
trash.
that.
I've never liked Scarface.
It's trash.
I can name every Black Hood movie is better than Scarface. Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society,
comparing.
New Jack City, Paid in
They
Full,
all-
Juice.
Yeah.
Scarface was whack.
Fresh.
That's why I never
New
Fresh.
Jersey Drive.
Oh my God, Fresh was fire.
I can go down the list.
Waiting
That's why I
to
never understood
Exhale.
why all the rappers used to have the
Waiting
Scarface
to
poster.
Exhale.
I never understood that.
No, it's just a
Like, what's the
reference.
worship with Scarface?
I get Godfather 1 and 2. You talking about two of the greatest movies ever made, right?
Oh, Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, right?
Goodfellas,
And
yeah.
you put Scarface.
Nah.
I mean, Donnie Brasco is much better than
was.
this, right?
So many of them.
So anyway, that's
Jamel got to leave. They've been tapping me for
Right.
about 20
She's
minutes.
She's got to go.
Speaking of Juice.
that's my hottest of takes right there. I saved that all for you guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank
There
you,
you have
Jamel.
it.
No,
Unbothered
thank you.
launches when?
It launches April 15th.
And
right.
when are you going to have time to get married?
Well, we are aiming at November.
Wow, this year?
Yeah, this year.
Y'all not playing around.
Got to make it happen. But
Okay.
we're waiting on. I'm getting old.
Are you having a
Did
destination
you know that
wedding?
he was going to propose? I think I saw you
no.
headed to the destination.
No, I had no idea.
Okay.
So he fooled me pretty good. He proposed on a roof in Los Angeles. So
Oh, it was in LA? Okay.
Yeah, we were on a helicopter ride.
Got you.
So he did that quite nicely with the help of my best friend. So he was able to pull
once
off
a
the
guy sets
conspiracy.
up a helicopter ride, you know what's coming.
No, but see, I didn't know it was coming because we are relatively new LA residents, and so we wanted to do some of the corny tourist things, and that's a great way to see the city. So I did not expect for that to happen at that moment. So, but yeah, no, we're not going to do a destination wedding. We're going to do it in LA.
All right.
Right. So, and shout out to anybody who wants to sponsor part of this wedding. Have you guys looked at what it costs to
Yeah.
like have a wedding? Oh my
Yeah.
God,
It's crazy.
I'm looking for
Don't-
sponsors.
Don't think we've forgotten how much you got from ESPN.
Those are all reports,
don't do that.
Charlamagne.
Don't
Those
do
are all
that. Don't do
reports.
that, Jamel. Okay, we know you got it. All right.
But if you want to put in on this open bar, let me know.
Sponsored by Spotify. Spotify. Check for Jamel's open
Wedding
bar.
podcast.
All right.
My goodness. All right. It's the Breakfast Club. It's
Unbothered
Jemele
and
Hill.
married.